Everybody. Great to see all the faces here today, and it's actually turned out to be a lovely day after the early scare we had. I don't know how you guys have found it, but the weather has just been the craziest thing the last while. I can't think November we were all praying for the rain. I think too much of us prayed and we got way too much rain. But it's always a good thing. I'll rather always say too much rain than not enough. But yeah, it's just crazy that we've had rain so late in the season. We'll see what that's going to do to winter. Normally they say the more rain we have, we don't have as cold a winter, but I've got a feeling we're in for a cold one. It started early this year. We had our first frosts last week Friday, so winter's definitely here. If you haven't covered up your tender plants, remember to cover them up. Winter is here. But yeah, today we're talking about winter color. Winter sometimes can feel so drab and dreary and there's no color in one's life, but there's no excuse not to have color with all the different options that we've got. Probably my first one to start off and my favorite is pansies. I think we all know them for their cheerful faces. In Afrikaans, they're also known as gesiggies, and hulle is regtig die mooiste gesiggies. And the thing that always amazes me about pansies is the colder it gets, the better they flower. It's amazing if one looks at early season when the flowers are small. As it gets colder and colder, the flowers become bigger and bigger. Big trick with pansies, because there's sometimes some confusion where people think pansies are actually a summer plant, which isn't actually the case. There's one variety called pansy Swiss giants that can grow into summer, but then it prefers semi-shade. If it's in full sun in summer, it's just too hot and it dies off. Whereas our normal pansies that we always get in winter, they prefer full sun. The more sun the better, or at least that nice hot afternoon sun. And the trick also of pansies is the watering, not to make sure they don't get overwatered. They don't like having wet feet. If they get wet feet, they get what they call black rot or phytophthora, and the roots just rot away. And that's been the tricky part for us with the growing as well, as with the rain. We just didn't have any control. We actually had to move all the pansies that we were growing as much as possible to tunnels that are covered, so we can at least keep them out of the rain. But looks like the weather's improved, and I think it's a record for this year. We've had 5 days with sunny weather. First time it feels like this year. Let's hope it continues. But yeah, pansies definitely my favorite, and the highlight is each one is unique. If you look at that one, that looks drastically different than what the other colors should be. You can create such a beautiful contrast with them. I would say with pansies, either plant them as a mass planting with one color to make an impact, or try and plant colors that contrast each other or complement each other. You could have all pastel colors together or nice bright spring colors together, but with all the colors available from yellow, oranges, pinks, whites, there's so many combinations that one can make. With them in full sun, they'd probably go on till about, I would say, in September, October. The warmer it gets, the sooner they'll go down. So it all depends on what our spring is like. If we've got a normal cooler spring, they'll go on longer in the season. If like the last few years where we almost have 1 month spring and it jumps to summer, then they're going to go down faster. Then we move on to pansies, little brother, one could say, your cheerful violas. And these also come in the most beautiful colors, beautiful combinations. And the interesting thing with violas, you can use them as edible flowers. They work excellent in salads, adding a lot of color to it. A lot of times with the baking, you see guys icing them. They add so much color to cakes and dishes. The nice thing about violas is they can tolerate a bit more shade. So they'd be happy in semi-shade areas, semi-shade to full sun. Full shade is going to be a bit too much for them. They'll grow in full shade, but the flowering won't be as good. So always think of them semi-shade, great for in pots and containers. If you've got a little gap that you think needs a bit of color, violas are your answer for them. And they also come in the most unusual colors. And then there's even some of us that like the darker stuff in life. There's almost a pitch black one. That's very, very unusual. A very dark purple, almost blackish color. And you can just imagine the contrast you can create again. Mixing that up with a yellow, it opens up a whole new color palette for the garden. Treatment with them exactly the same. Make sure they don't get overwatered. And I found they can even last a bit longer into summer. I've even had some of my violas go right through summer. You have to trim them back. They can get a bit leggy. But if they're in enough shade and they don't get too hot, then they'll go longer into the summer months. Then for in front, if we want something that's a bit shorter, alyssum are always my best bet. Nice thing about them is they stay low. They've got this beautiful cascading habit. In the past, we used to have just the normal white ones, but nowadays all these beautiful pastel colors. Fragrance-wise, I definitely find the white one is still the strongest. You lose a bit of fragrance with the other colors. And it's also called heuningblommetjie because it's got that lovely sweet fragrance to it. Great as a spiller for pots. They'll cascade and droop over the side, or just as a ground cover. I've seen people even use them in between their paving blocks, and you've got that beautiful fragrance coming through. One of the best things to plant if you want to attract bees as well. They just love the nectar from them. So alyssum, great for in front of the beds. Then another favorite that sometimes can be a bit tricky is your snapdragons. And big thing with the snapdragons is they don't like the summer heat. I find here by us in South Africa, snapdragons always do best in autumn and springtime. Winter, they're tough against the cold, but the flowering always won't be as much. But if you plant them now, you've got an automatic head start on springtime. Then the plants will be big and established, and they'll give you a beautiful show in spring. There's some beautiful colors coming out these days. They've got the most intricate faces, and you won't believe there's the pollen inside there, almost hidden by this little trapdoor. I'm actually wondering what's the pollinator that actually gets past that trapdoor. Probably ants or something like that that helps to pollinate them. In the past, the snapdragons we used to be the very tall ones, which are beautiful for cut flowers, but unfortunately in our gardens they get very tall and floppy and they tend to fall over very quickly. So what the growers or the breeders have been doing is they've been breeding varieties that are more compact and that flower more. So now we end up with beautiful garden varieties that don't take up a lot of space, they don't fall over as easily, sturdier, stronger plants with more beautiful colors. So they're also perfect for a bit of color now, and then your main burst will be in springtime. And then a big favorite, but I'm sometimes worried that we don't always have enough space for them in our gardens, is sweet peas. We all know beautiful tall sweet peas that are a climber. We always plant them during this time of the year, and then spring they give us this beautiful show with the lovely fragrant flowers. But a nice idea, if one doesn't have the space for a trellis or a wall that they can climb on, is to use the dwarf ones, so the ones that don't get as big, but putting them in hang baskets. They've got this beautiful cascading effect. You could even make a mixed basket with some beautiful pansies, alyssum, and then pop a few of the sweet peas in. They're going to cascade over and then give you that beautiful burst of color in springtime. So the dwarf ones, excellent for pots or hang baskets or just in the ground. Tall ones, I do find you do need a structure, a trellis or something for them to climb on. Important with sweet peas is doing good soil preparation. So if it's going to be in a pot or hang basket, fresh potting soil, nice fertilizer, we'll touch a bit on that a bit later. If it's in the ground, lots of fresh compost in there. And I would say dig to about at least 30 centimeters. Give them enough space for their roots. Some people even say go down to about 1 meter. Now there was the old way they always talked about with a trench digging, where you dig a big trench, half of the soil out, mix it with fresh compost, back in when it's ready for your sweet peas. But to me, just to about 30 centimeters is enough. Take out half of the old soil from the hole, mix it with fresh compost, and then they're ready for planting.
Louis?
Yep.
What wall do you
A sunny facing.
Sunny
Definitely
facing.
with sweet peas, the more sun the better. And that's the odd thing about winter. You don't have that many shade options, but I'll touch on it a bit later. Then our dianthus or our carnations. Nice thing about them is they're what we call biennials. So that means we get at least 2 seasons out of them. They're hardy and tough against the cold, and beautiful flowers. And what the breeders have been working on, you can see how big those flowers are. In the past, the dianthus flowers used to be about the size of a 50 cent. So they've been working on giving bigger and better flowers, just a nice sunny area for them again. And the only trick with a dianthus, once it gets a bit leggy and it's finished flowering and it doesn't look that neat, just go in, give it a haircut, cut it back to about 15 centimeters. It'll reshoot and reflower again. And also beautiful colors available with them. Then onto our second biennial. And this is a great way, putting biennials in, then you don't have to replace as big an area with color every year. Probably my favorite is your gazanias. They're beautiful indigenous South African plants, so it's used to the conditions that we have. Once it's established, it's very heat and drought tolerant. Can get into quite a nice big bush as well. But I think the mistake we sometimes make is we just allow them to grow and grow and grow, and in time you end up with a scraggly bush with 1 or 2 flowers. Trick is cut them back regularly before they get to that size. They'll give you a lot more flowers and they'll look a lot neater as well. And another interesting thing about the gazanias is the flowers only open up when there's sunshine. So if we had to put this one out in the sun, we'll actually do it afterwards. By the time everybody's finished with their coffee, they'll see the flowers will be open and happy again. So if your flowers aren't opening on the day, have a look. It's probably the clouds that are keeping them in check. But yeah, same with the dianthus, cut them back. And with these, you don't have to worry about cutting them too finicky. Go in with a scissor, cut them back roughshod, they'll reshoot again. Then onto something a bit different. Let's see who knows what this plant is. This is actually a variety of kale, the storm variety. Kale is actually a vegetable. It's not a color plant as we know it, but just imagine adding some of these with its textures. All the frilly bits, it's got some very unusual textures. It's going to add a different dimension to your plants. When we were in Canada last year, it was amazing to see how they use them in the mixed planters, where you'd have a beautiful pot with some crazy combinations. They'll mix cannas together with this, with some summer annuals, some things I would have never thought of, but they really look beautiful once they're bigger. And the added advantage, you've got a great food source as well. So great for cooking. I've even seen what people do is they make kale chips, where they take the kale and they deep fry it, or they either put it in a batter and they deep fry it. But just like this, lovely as well. This has actually got a lot more iron than spinach. So you could say this is like spinach on steroids. But yeah, so quite a nice addition, and making it multi-purpose. Where I think a lot of time our gardens, it's moving away from the old, or the, can you say, the idea where we had our flower garden, we had our veggie garden, we had our rose garden. Garden these days are mixing and matching, trying to bring in all the elements together. Then we're ready to move on to the shade. We go on this side, and that's a tricky bit with winter. You really don't have as many options for the shade as summer, but the options that we do have are beautiful. First one is your primrose, your primula acaulis, a short plant but with beautiful flowers. They've got a slight mounding habit in the middle, and if one looks at some of the new colors coming out these days, there's some beautiful combinations. I find they're excellent in pots for that quick burst of color, in beds in front as a border. They'll also go through to about, I would say, October, depending on the heat we have and the amount of shade they have. But very, very floriferous, a great addition for some color. Then our next one's probably, we've all got them in our garden, is primulas. But I don't know what you guys are finding, but this year the primulas are so late for flowering. Normally by this time the white and the lavender is already in flower. The lavender is always the quickest, but we haven't had any of our lavenders flower so far. I don't know how it's been in your gardens, but very late this year. Yeah, no, it's not a good primula year, I would say. And that's interesting with plants. Every year there's something different. There's one type of plant that outperforms the others, some plants that don't do as good as they normally do. And then what we also found very unusual with the pink color, where the new leaves almost come out like this purplish color. And we've been trying to figure it out. We've been talking with the breeders and the growers, and they actually think it's more of a genetic trait. Because one wouldn't actually think it, but South Africa is one of the few countries that are still growing our normal Primula malacoides. Overseas, they aren't growing them at all. So what that means is the big companies overseas that breeds the plants and gets these new varieties and new colors, they're just not focusing on the Primula. So this is a bit of a, how could I say, a neglected plant, that there's no new colors coming through. But I see on this one there's a nice pink bud coming through, so hopefully all of our primulas will start coming into color now soon. Then some other ones, and that's basically our options for the shade. So your fairy primrose, they're great if you want to add a bit of height. They've got these lovely tall stems, and then interesting with them, if they go to seed, it's normally the lavender that comes up the next year. So you could have a whole bed of beautiful pink primulas. You leave them to go to seed. Next year there's only lavender coming up, because it shows that lavender is the dominant color. So when it goes to seed, it loses that hybridization and it reverts back to the original form, that is the lavender color. But like I say, one's quite restricted on the shade during winter. But again, the great advantage of winter is we tend to have more sun in our gardens, so a lot of the trees have lost their leaves. And that's a great way to then add color with the plants that like the sun. Soon as summer comes through and all the leaves are there again and there's more shade, then you've got more options for the summer. Just showing this nice combination. Look at that beautiful purple with the yellow, great contrast in there. And then we've also got our beautiful calendulas. I almost forgot about them. Beautiful colors. They're basically like marigolds for the winter. That same type of shape. You can even use these in cooking as well. They're lovely to add to salads. It's got a very interesting flavor. I wouldn't say planty flavor or spicy. It's got its unique own taste, but also a great tough plant if you want to add those bright yellows and oranges to your garden. And then probably my favorite I haven't even talked about yet is poppies. To me, there's nothing that says winter like beautiful Iceland poppies. These bright, tall, cheerful flowers. Probably bees like them the most as well. One always see when they're in flower, loads of bees by them. Great for adding height, back of your borders. Big trick with poppies always, as soon as the flowers are spent, pick off the extra flower heads. And I would say if one's buying them in this size, they're ready to plant. You can just let them keep on flowering. If you're planting them from seedling trays, we always recommend pinching out the first 3 to 4 buds. What that does, it enables the plant to get a lot bigger and stronger. It'll give you a lot more flowers going forward. So always pinch off those first buds, then the remaining ones will flower a lot better. Great to use as cut flowers as well. They add a lot of color. Not as long lasting, but with the amount that they flower, you can definitely afford to pick them twice a week, pop them in a vase. Beautiful color that they'll give. And interesting, about 2 years ago, we really struggled with the poppies, where we couldn't get our normal Iceland poppies. The varieties we got in, they weren't nice, they weren't flowering as good, but luckily they managed to bring in our old favorite Iceland poppies. Nothing compares with the flowering of them. They're still the best by far. And then another vegetable actually is your ornamental kale. These guys here. So this is also same family as these, in the kale family. Not as nice for eating. They don't have a nice taste at all. It's very, very bitter, the leaves. You can, if you want to, or you're very hungry, you can eat it, but not a nice taste. But they give you great colors all the way through winter. Then springtime, once it gets too hot, they make this long flower spike. Then you know the time for them is finished. I find they work great as a centerpiece on a table, even in a pot. Have these in the middle, pop some violas around them, and you've got a beautiful, stunning container with this as your focal point in the middle. Only problem with them, sometimes a bit of aphids, but I'll talk about the pests a bit later. And then another option we've got for the shade, which we normally know as an indoor plant, is your cyclamen. We've got loads of them with Mother's Day coming up, and yeah, also to all the mums on Sunday, early happy Mother's Day. Hope you all have a lovely day and you get spoiled rotten. But yeah, cyclamen, great for adding color either indoors or outdoors. If you're going to use them outdoors, try and give them a more shady area. And also them, interesting enough, the colder they get, the better they flower. They don't like direct frost, but they like that cooler weather. So you'll find generally if you keep one indoors or one on the patio, the one on the patio tends to flower a lot better. Big trick with cyclamen, if you're going to keep them in a pot, never water from above. Always water from below. Problem that happens, because it's actually a bulbous plant, everything grows out from a bulb. If you flower them overhead, they can get bulb rot very quickly. And what happens, the whole plant just collapses, and one thinks, oh, I can't grow cyclamen. Big trick, always water them from below. I find the easiest is just fill a basin with a bit of water, let it stand in there. Once you feel on top and it's nice and moist, then you know it's soaked up enough water. Indoors, watering would be a bit less than outdoors. A lot of people even plant them directly into their garden beds. Then you can water overhead because it's got more soil, it's got more drainage in there. But if you keep them in pots, always remember water from below. When they go down during summer, you can put the pot aside in a shady area. Water it maybe once a month, just to prevent the soil from drying out. Next year autumn, they'll come up again. Sometimes they don't even go down during summer and you have these sporadic flowerings. But ideally, you actually want them to go down, to go into its dormancy, its natural sleep, and then they come up in autumn for the show during winter. So a real excellent option for color indoors or on the patio or the shady areas. And there's some really beautiful colors out these days. So if we move on to some of our basket options, I just want to show you guys these beautiful baskets that we planted up. And just look at that beautiful show with the pansies. So it just shows the impact that it makes if you do the planting on the side. And these are baskets that we plant ourselves, with the idea being that when the season's over and the plants have finished flowering, you bring us back the basket, we replant it with annuals that'll be right for that time of the year, and you pay less because you're not paying for the basket again. So you're just paying for a replanting fee. In the past, we used to do it with a wire hang basket, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to get ones that have got the right partitions on the wire. So it all doesn't look nice, it doesn't look symmetrical. So these plastic ones we find have filled up the gap nicely, and there's none of that coir that the birds can pinch. We've got them in beautiful pansies and some primroses for the shade at the moment. If we, sorry ma'am?
Can I just ask a question? If you're hanging that basket from, like I've got a bedroom that gets quite a bit of shade in the morning, but it gets the sun in the afternoon, does it have to hang in the sun all day long?
No, I would say generally with plants we'd say afternoon sun would be the same as full sun.
Okay.
So as long as it gets sunlight from 12 o'clock, I would see that the same as full sun.
Okay.
Sun in the morning till 12 o'clock and then shade, that'll be semi-shade, or morning sun, afternoon shade, and then full shade would be shade from the morning through to the afternoon. So if the area's got afternoon sun, anything that works in full sun would be perfect there as well.
So I usually kill my pansies. How much water would I put in a basket?
I would always say with any plant, always feel the soil first, and it all depends on the weather. If we've got warmer weather, just like us humans, the warmer it is, the more water we drink. Cooler it is, the less water we drink. Same with the plants. With the current weather we've been having, I would say no less than twice a week. If it gets a lot warmer, then we'd go maybe to 3 times a week. Cooler weather, once a week. And always for plants, it's better instead of a little bit of water every day. Rather give them a full watering, saturate them completely, and then dry them out in between. A great way to also figure out, because sometimes we look at the plant, it's dry on top, it needs water. Is if you're able, with like a basket, you can pick it up and feel the weight of it. If it's heavy, you know it's watered. If it's light, it needs water. Or if not, we do the finger dip test, where you just put your finger in to about the second digit. If you feel it's still moist, let it dry out a bit more. Because what happens a lot of time, the soil on top is dry, but at the bottom where the roots are, it can still be moist. And if we water again, then it's too wet and the roots rot away. And especially with pansies, like I said, they don't like too much water.
Thank you.
And then if we move on to our planting, for all of these, remember always potting soil. Then the fertilizer I'd recommend would be the Talbon Vita Fruit and Flower, the 315. So this is going to help them to flower better. It's got a bit of nitrogen for the growth, but this would be the best one to get them flowering great. You could always mix a little bit of bone meal in for the root development, or alternatively, another great product is your seedling food. This one here. So what I normally do with this one, when I've prepared my beds, I've got my fresh compost in. Normally what I do is I'll just make the little holes for the seedlings. Before I put them in, just a teaspoon into each hole, plant on top, and then they're ready to go. And then you can maybe give them one feed with a 315. Nice thing being organic, it lasts up to 3 months. You can always use a liquid fertilizer as well. But remember, especially with these flowering plants, they use a lot of energy to flower. So to replace that energy and to get them flowering better, feeding is definitely the best way. Then you can always plant with compost or even the seedling food in the beds, the seedling mix. This is just a finer type of compost. For me, the Bark Unlimited compost is also a fine mixture, so that'll be perfect on its own, or then the seedling mix. And it just depends on the quality of your soil. If you've got a good loamy soil, you wouldn't even have to add any of the soil mixes, just some fresh fertilizer with it. And always very important, especially during winter, is mulching as well. We tend to think of mulching as a summer-only activity, but mulching is also very good for the plants during winter. It also keeps their roots protected when we have bad frosts. So with autumn now, all the leaves falling down, don't chuck them away. Keep them in your garden beds. As they break down, they become compost. Before that, they act as a mulch. And I would say everybody on the way out, maybe just drive down Kirshner Road here past the primary school in Westwood. You'll see there's these rows of these beautiful liquid ambers. Almost looks like it's a fire. And all the leaves falling down just looks beautiful. So you can even add some color into your garden using a mulch like that. And yeah, I think that's it for winter planting. Any questions?
Just the cymbidiums are doing well at the moment.
Doing well, but we found they're actually a bit late this year as well. Normally by this time we would have had plants for sale for Mother's Day, but the growers haven't got any in flower at the moment, the local guys we get from. But it's a good sign that yours is flowering. Could also be an early flowering variety. It's amazing with cymbidiums, you get some that flower here in April already, all the way through to others that only flower in August.
I find the dark ones flower first and then it's the yellows and the whites.
Okay, so the colors coming through at different times. And there are some cymbidiums which are actually orchids. They also give you beautiful color in winter. And interesting enough with them, they actually need the cooler weather to flower. People that try and grow them in the warmer areas of South Africa, I've even heard what they do is they put some ice blocks around it in autumn to actually trick the plant and fool it into thinking it's cold enough for me to flower. But luckily here by us it's cold enough already, that'll get them flowering. For cymbidiums, they prefer morning sun, afternoon shade. They don't like that hot afternoon sun that can burn the leaves. And very important, when yours is coming into spike and before it opens up, the flowers can be affected by the frost. So if we've got a bad cold front coming through and there's definitely frost, rather keep them in an area where they're going to be protected from those cold winds so you don't lose the flowers. Always remember the plant can take the cold, but the flowers can be burnt by the frost. Let's see, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
You guys did a fantastic job in splitting up my cymbidium, so now I've got a whole lot of pots. And out of the 10 pots I've got out a big clump, only one is showing a spike with flowers.
Yeah, so that definitely always happens after repotting. A lot of times you find when repotting it sometimes even skips a year and then only flowers. So I don't expect too many flowers this year,
Yeah.
but next year you're definitely going to get bumper flowers out of them. And important with cymbidiums, if you don't split or divide them regularly, they get very pot bound, there's no space for new bulbs, and then they just don't flower at all. So important that we repot them when necessary. Repotting would always be after they flower, never before they flower. So around here from September, October, then one looks at the repotting for them. Next, I'm actually going to move up to something completely different, but something that's very close to my heart. Don't know if any of you have seen on the news, and we've also spread word on it on Facebook a bit, but what's currently happening in Vembe there in northern Limpopo, the Venda area, where they've declared a heavy industrial zone, where they want to do big scale coal mining, terrible industrialization of that area, and it looks like they're probably even going to cut out 30 to 50,000 baobabs, over 650,000 protected trees, things like knobthorns, leadwoods, these trees that take ages to grow, and to me it's just such a travesty. Shouldn't happen. It's terrible as mankind how we always put greed before everything else. Luckily it looks like it's still a bit in the planning stage. I think the politicians are talking of it as a done deal. It's definitely going to happen, but there's still time to fight it. There's an organization called Living Limpopo that are doing great work to spread the word on this, to try and get them to stop it. So have a look, go onto their website or their Facebook, spread it to all your friends and family. The more we can get the word out there, there's a petition that one can sign as well. But I think it's all of our heritage, and for my kids in the future and future generations, I'd want them to experience the beauty of a South African bushveld with those unique biomes you won't find anywhere in the world. And I would say almost the idiotic thing for me is we all know we need job creation. There's so many of these things that we need, but we can still have it without going that mining route. Rather promote ecotourism, where you can actually employ more people, it's more sustainable, and we'd still have those beautiful biomes for the way going forward. So I hope they really change their minds with it, and they put other things before greed. But I think it's up to us as nature lovers and as a responsible society to hold them account. So definitely spread the word on that. Then something also a bit personal for me. Don't know if any of you have seen these beautiful moths around.
Yes.
We always knew them as lapalala moths. Don't know who can remember the old lapalala there in the Waterberg area. This is your cream striped owl moth. It's got these little two eyes, and this is what's called mimicry in nature. And that helps to, when a predator wants to attack, this is, ooh, these eyes, it's an owl, I've got to get away. So it's this defense mechanism. And the unique thing about these were always Rika's favorite moths. And seeing them around, it just makes me feel she's close by. Yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys.
Sorry, Louis, just not on the subject, but butterflies. This year, I have seen big yellow butterflies, huge. They looked as if they were all going in a northern direction. You remember the little one, we used to talk about white butterflies and migration, but they weren't really white, they were like
more creamy color, yeah.
But these are a beautiful, bright yellow, and they're very big.
So I think it just shows that population explosion that they must have had. And I think that's all to do with the weather. The lots of rain, conditions were probably ideal. And with a lot of time with these animals and insects in nature, when there's too much of them, that's when they start migrating. Because they feel if we're all going to lay our eggs in this area, next year those larvae are going to destroy everything. There's not going to be enough for them to look after. That's why they migrate. I've also we've seen loads of butterflies this year everywhere, and just amazing seeing that they're still around. Also very important when we do our spraying in the garden. Another tip, especially for the pollinators, never spray in the heat of the day. Because if you spray 11, 12 o'clock, all these pollinators are going to be around. Then they're going to be more prone to get the poison in. When spraying, always spray early morning or late afternoon. So then there's less chance of affecting the pollinators. But yeah, just amazing how nature always gives us something new every year. Yes, ma'am.
Louis, our lawns in the winter, underneath my lawn it's not very good, a lot of building rubble, so it's not very thick, so it goes very dry very quickly. How would you say, is there anything you can do during the winter months, or do you have to wait to spring?
Now, with the kikuyu lawn, there's not really a lot one can do this time of the year. What one can do is give it maybe just one general fertilizer feeding before winter really kicks in while it's still green.
So you do it now?
I would say do it now before it goes brown.
Okay.
A general 2-3-2 would be perfect because that's going to help keep the roots strong. And that's the only thing that will happen with them in winter is the roots still develop, the top's completely dormant. So giving them those extra phosphates, that'll keep the roots growing during winter. Come springtime, especially if you say the soil isn't that good, lawn dressing is going to be the best way to keep them healthy in springtime. Cut it short if it's gone quite fatty and you've got all that sponginess, then you cut them short, go with a rake and you rake out all that old thatch, lawn dressing on top, and then once it starts growing, then you can start fertilizing. But for this time of the year, just a 2-3-2 just before winter starts, that'll keep the roots healthy and help them to grow during winter, so that spring comes, then they're ready to grow.
I've also got these funny patches of like a funny green thing that it's like a matty root system, and it seems to be attacking
Taking
a lot,
over.
spreading. Yeah.
Is it a round leaf?
Yes, sort of
Round
round.
leaf. Could even be wonder lawn, which some people even use as a lawn substitute, but it can be very aggressive. There, your best way is either manually taking them out, make sure you get all the roots with it, or then use a selective herbicide, which means it's a herbicide that you'll spray over. It won't affect the lawn, but it would kill any round-leafed weed. So anything that doesn't have a long grass-like leaf, it'll take care of. Sometimes you need to do a follow-up spray. I always recommend spray, wait 2 weeks, then you spray again. And the nice thing is it's going to kill it into the roots. Where normally if you take it out by hand, a root or two stays behind, regrows. Also with weeds in your lawn, very important, like they always say, 1 year seeding, 7 years weeding. You always want to stop those weeds from going into flower. So if you see them, if it's just 1 or 2 in the lawn, dig them out before they go to flower. If you've got a lot, rather spray, and try and spray them before they go to seed. Then you actually break up that cycle. If you wait too long, the seeds are in there already. And interesting, something we always get during springtime is people get their lawn dressing, they put it on the lawn, they start watering, and then they've got weeds coming up. So it's in the lawn dressing, the weeds. But it'll always be existing weed seeds in your lawn, and you don't notice them all the way through winter because we're not watering. We're not disturbing the soil to allow the seeds to germinate. Come springtime and we rake it a bit or we loosen the soil a bit, we start watering, then those weeds start coming up. Luckily with both of the suppliers we've got with our lawn dressing, they actually put it through a process that it has a lot of heat in there and that actually cooks the weed seeds. So with our mixers I'd definitely be confident that they won't have any weeds in. What we always do as well when season starts, with every batch that we get in, we put some on the ground on our lawns at the back here to actually see what comes up, if there's anything funny coming through. But if ever you get a bag of lawn dressing for us, something like that happens, always just keep the bag, bring it back in, we report it to our supplier. It's usually got a batch number and they do some testing on their side. But it generally happens because weed seeds can spread for kilometers through the wind. You could have somebody 3 blocks down that's got a weed farm at his house with his lawn. All the seeds come up, we've got a windy day and the whole neighborhood is covered.
Or
But
you have a garden service that comes.
yeah, I think they can also be culprits. They don't always clean their equipment when they move from property to property. But with weed control, always try and catch them before they go to seed. Then you're eliminating a bigger problem in the future.
Sorry, could you give me the name of the for the killer, for the weeds?
The weed killer, it's Super Lawn Weeder. Super Lawn Weeder. That's the one I'd recommend. It's basically the same as Hormaban, just the one that we buy, it's priced a bit better than the Hormaban. But that'll take care of all your broad-leaved weeds. And another tip as well, when spraying weed killers, never spray on a windy day, because you could be spraying that patch on the weeds and you've got a gust of wind blows it onto your beautiful roses and they get damaged. So always on a wind still day. If you're spraying close to your borders, I would always recommend just keep a piece of cardboard in between that catches any drift, and then always have a separate spray bottle that you mark for lawn only. Because what can happen with these products, let's say you spray your weed killer for your lawn in the bottle this time of the year, come springtime, September, October, and you spray your roses and you use that same bottle, even if you've triple rinsed it. Don't know if anybody's ever seen with plastic Tupperware. If you put curry in there, you never get that color out and you never get that smell out. So plastic is slightly porous, it'll always absorb a bit of that. So always have a separate bottle. I always say you've got to have 3 bottles. Have one for your general garden spraying for the insects, the roses, your fungicides. Then you have one separate bottle for your lawns, and then one separate bottle for your non-selective herbicides. So 3 bottles, and you'll be sure you can spray anything in your garden.
Thank you. Including ants.
The ants have been quite bad this year. I don't know if you guys have experienced it as well. I've been fighting a running battle with them this whole year. What I found actually worked quite well that I used at my house a while ago is this organic kill. This aerosol spray, which is an organic product. It's safe to use indoors. It's even got this lovely citronella smell to it. So this works great. It's got a bit of residual action. And then still the best for me in the long run is to use products like ant nest granules or nip it, and there's even this new ant gel one out where it's a syringe, you press a little bit of gel. All those products work in the way where the ants take the poison back into the nest and it kills the nest in the long term. So long term that's the best. If you just want to give them a quick kill, this is the best, the organic kill. But ants have been quite bad this year. Hopefully we've got a cold winter that's going to bring their populations down. And problem I'm thinking as well is those aren't our normal indigenous ants. That's ant from South America or something like that. That's why it really, there's no natural predators for it. But luckily we still don't have those fire ants like they have in America. Those are terrible. They're just destroying whole ecosystems. Luckily that's not here yet. But yeah, for ants there's a few options, but you will find with the cooler weather coming now, they are gonna become more dormant, not disappear completely, but they do become less active. Alright guys, I think that's it for me today. Hope everybody has a lovely winter.